Welcome to the show, guys. Before we get started, feels very appropriate to have a moment dedicated to the pirate, the mad scientist, Mike Leach, such a pioneer in this sport, not just college football, but the sport of football, bringing in the air raid system, one that most programs, most offenses have adopted, if not the whole system, parts of the system towards their system. Very much a pioneer in that regard, but more so than that, and that's a big deal, but even more so than that, the personality, the uniqueness, the flair, the pizzazz, the Mike Leach experience. Just a gem of a person. So quotable, never know what to expect from the guy, just a very unique, in the best of ways, personality, of which we don't really see in college football. Most college football coaches are very much no nonsense, to the book, and I'm sure he was in reality, but his personality was very colorful, very flavored. You never knew what you were going to get, whether it was talking about Halloween candy. Whenever you ask him, when you tee him up for a great question, he's gonna deliver. I mean, that was the great thing about him. And it seems like the media had leaned more and more into that over the years, but just countless quotes. Some of my fondest memories were in '08, the Michael Crabtree play, that Texas Tech team beating the Texas Longhorns, ruining their national championship season. My whole family is UT grads, and I remember the heartbreak after that. Very core memory of Mike Leach. And then, of course, the many quotes and positive things he had to say about Texas A&M and Kyle Field. Called it the Taj Mahal of college football. Loved playing here, probably because he was good here. He would always kick our ass. Not always, but quite often. There's a lot of things I'll remember about him in relates to my nook of college football. He'll be missed. We'll never forget him. Thank you, Mike Leach, for great football memories. It's December. Things are moving like crazy. It's transfer portal window. It's signing day coming right up. For other schools, it's bowl season, playoff season. It's kind of a benefit that Texas A&M doesn't have a bowl game right now, and that's totally glass half full. Obviously, we wish we were in a bowl game. We wish we won 6 games. But here we are, and we can look at it as a positive because other schools are having to do scouting, work on their personnel, practice. A&M is just focused on recruiting. Here's the thing about recruiting now. Previously, recruiting was just getting your high school prospects in, maintaining your current commitments, and just grinding down to that signing day. But now with the transfer portal era, the transfer portal window kind of just totally surrounds the early signing day period. So not only are you focusing on recruiting high school prospects, coaches are focused on recruiting transfer portal prospects. But not only that, because every player on your current roster is eligible to transfer and play immediately, they're essentially commitments at this point. You have to treat them the way you would treat a commitment in high school recruiting. Because everybody knows that once you're committed to a program, it doesn't mean you're locked in necessarily. It means you're saying you're locked in, but these college athletes, these prospects, they're young and fickle. So the same has to be said for your current roster. If they have the freedom to leave and explore, they might just take it. So you're recruiting at so many different levels. You're recruiting high school prospects. You're recruiting your own commitments from high school. You're recruiting transfer portal guys, and you're recruiting your own damn team. So these coaches' hands are in like 4 or 5 different cookie jars depending on where your program's at. But yeah, it is kind of beneficial that A&M doesn't have to focus on the bowl game right now. There is so much going on. So we're going to talk about all that stuff. Talk about a big recruiting weekend coming up. Talk about a couple of commitments quickly that A&M got over the last week. We already did a whole video on one of them in Ruben Owens, but a couple other guys there. And then we're going to talk about a couple of transfer portal targets and positions of need. Before I get into it, just take everything with a grain of salt. Everything is just rumors and speculation at this point. And by all reports, transfer portal guys are much harder to get a gauge on or communicate with than the high school guys. So everything should be taken with a grain of salt. I will let you know the degree of reality that each rumor is based in, based on the research that I've done. But follow along with me. I'm going to give you the highlights of what A&M is doing right now. But you're going to want to go to the insiders if you're going to want to keep up step by step. I will bring you the highlights and the most important stuff, and I will discuss it here for you. So 247, TexAgs, On3, all the Instagram accounts, Hayes Fawcett, everybody. Go follow them. I'm bringing you the Spark Notes, and we're going to talk about it here. So we're going to start with, I think, probably the number one piece of news right now, and that is what is going on with the A&M roster currently. We had 2 players declared not out yet, but one entered the portal and one going pro. The one going pro is one that we all saw coming in Antonio Johnson. And he did make us wait a while, get our hopes up a little bit, but he declared to go pro, and he's a guy that needed to go pro. First round prospect, just one of the most secure tacklers you'll ever see at defensive back at the college level. Antonio was he was the steady heartbeat of this defense for 3 years. Just so reliable. Not necessarily a big turnover guy, but just a guy you could rely on to make secure plays. He'll be missed, but he's always an Aggie legend, and he'll go represent A&M at the highest level. Now, one that's less expected, it was still within the realm of possibility, but not one that we love to see, and that's Keith Brown declaring for the portal. This is fresh off the press, just announced. Yeah, he entered the portal, had kind of a good start to the year, but then kind of disappeared a little bit. Some rumors of off-the-field troubles, which, you make your decision there. It's all rumors and speculation. We've heard rumblings of it. Read into that what you will. But Keith is in the portal, and that creates even more urgency at that wide receiver position because we already talked about Chase Lane entering the portal a couple weeks ago, and he just committed to Georgia Tech. Good for Chase Lane. We wish him nothing but the best. Great guy. Also, Devin Price has entered the portal recently as well. So the back end of that receiver room is really, really, I won't even say bleak. It's empty. All you really have are your starters right now. You have Moose, you have Evan, you have Noah Thomas, maybe Anais, depending on what he does. And then besides that, you're really going to want to make a splash in the transfer portal because you don't have any receiver commits right now for the 2023 class. So Keith, probably gone because he will probably get picked up, get a lot of eyes on him. He's shown enough. He's from Miami, or he's from Florida. I think he's from Miami. So that's, he's probably going to go back home. Couple of rumors. Edger and Cooper, rumored to be eyeing the portal. Most of these rumors are coming from opposing programs, namely LSU. But I don't know the truth to this, and maybe you do. Some people have said that he briefly had a snap story saying that he was going to enter the portal. I don't know if that's true or not. Y'all tell me. But more cryptically, he recently tweeted the eyeball emoji that Kellen Mond made famous for the A&M Twitter, for A&M Twitter. He tweeted that, and we don't know what it means. Maybe it's something good. Maybe he's referring to a couple of high-profile linebackers coming to the visit this weekend, in which Edgerrin will probably be hosting them in some capacity. Hopefully it's about that. Worst case scenario, he's eyeing the portal. So I don't think he's a portal guy. He's been good here. He has a clear path to starting here and showcasing his ability here in a defense and a defensive front that will be much more experienced and allow him much more opportunity to make an impact next year. Talking about those young D linemen getting into year 2. Good D-line makes for good linebacker play. So I don't think it makes a lot of sense for him to leave. So I'm hoping that eyeball emoji thing is a very positive development. And we'll talk more about that big recruiting weekend later in this video. A couple of names just to keep an eye on. I already mentioned Anais. We don't know what he's doing. Damani, we don't know what he's doing. Damani's a guy I really would lean to be going pro, especially after that LSU game. He had a couple of big moments this season to raise his stock, but he tweeted his goodbyes after that game. I assume his head was towards going to the NFL. But you never know. Keep an eye out for it. And then Anais is a guy I slightly lean to going pro. He rolled the dice last year. He came back. He ended up losing that gamble. Will he do it again, or will he take his chances going pro? It's a gamble either way. What will Anais do? And then a couple names I don't anticipate going pro, but we still don't know. Layden Robinson and Chris Russell. Chris Russell did have a career year, but I don't think he's just pro material quite yet. One more good year and he could be. You know, he took a big step this year. What if he takes another step next year? And then Layden, early in the year, preseason, you would think that he was a surefire candidate to be an NFL draft guy, an early exit guy. But after the year the O-line had, I think he really could benefit from coming back, get some continuity going in that O-line, get another year under Adazio's system. And it looks like Adazio is going to be back because he's been in some in-home visits all week. Look out for all those names, but specifically Anias and Damani. But that's enough about our team and players leaving and all that jazz. You know, that stuff sucks. Let's talk about something exciting. Let's talk about a couple of the transfer portal candidates, a couple of prospects, and some of which have substantiated rumors, substantiated reports of being interested in having lines of communication with A&M. Others not so much, but they're still names you're going to want to keep an eye on. Because keep in mind, just because there's not a rumor today doesn't mean there won't be a rumor tomorrow or the next week or even the next week. The lines of communication may not be established just yet, but this is a 45-day transfer portal window, so things can develop. But let's start with a couple of secure names, one of which is in a dire position of need, the main position of need at linebacker. And some of y'all have already mentioned him in the comments, I believe, but that's Mason Cobb out of Oklahoma State. Started all year, very secure tackler, big lower body, has 2 years of eligibility left. He's the exact kind of guy with experience that linebacker room really needs right now. Because you only have 3 guys in that room that aren't in the portal. So look for Mason Cobb. He is supposed to be visiting this coming weekend. He was supposed to be in the weekend before, but the word on the street is that he moved it to this coming weekend where there are supposed to be a lot more potential visits coming in. So it could be just a huge recruiting party. We'll talk about it more later. Another name, and this is at a growing position of need, and that's the receiver room with, it seems like we're getting weekly portal announcements there, and that's Grant DeBose. He's a star receiver out of Charlotte. Had like 9 touchdowns on the year, almost 800 yards, big-bodied, 6'3", rangy guy, the kind of guy that the current roster doesn't really have besides Noah Thomas. You have one guy, but your mainstays in Moose, Evan, and Anias, if he comes back, those are all smaller guys. Those aren't the jump ball guys, even though they can have some success in the jump ball. But this guy can utilize his body with those jump balls. Kind of just fills in what you really need at receiver. And he could be at the back end, or he could be a guy that works himself into playing time because he was a star at the lower level football. He's rumored to be visiting soon. Hopefully he gets in on that big weekend. No confirmation of that. Keep looking out for your sources to get the full list on that weekend. And then a guy that just entered the portal a couple days ago. And as you can tell, this thing is a work in progress. This transfer thing is always in motion. So if you're not in the portal now, there are people entering the portal every day, people committing to other teams every day. But one that just entered the portal, is Virginia linebacker Nick Jackson. 3-year starter, 3-year All-ACC, dominant in the run game and as a tackler. Not necessarily as strong in the passing game, but with the system that DJ Durkin runs, he seems like a hand-in-glove fit for this defense. Especially when they run like the 3-man front, the 3-man defensive line front, you're going to need some secure run stoppers in that linebacker group. And he seems like the kind of guy to fit that role in the defensive back heavy system that Durkin runs. There are very, very, very faint rumors of lines of communication being established between A&M and Nick Jackson already. But something that's not a rumor, that is fact, is that A&M recruited Nick Jackson years ago when he was a freshman, 2018, I believe. So that line of communication has been previously established. He knows about A&M. He's been recruited by A&M. I look at that as a positive. Seems like a perfect fit for what the Aggies need. And now a guy whose name we've known, I've mentioned him in the show already, that's Tony Grimes. He tweeted that he had a great visit, #giggle ? Is what he tweeted. I'll put it on the screen. I say #yes, get over here, bud. You know, Tony Grimes was a guy that was highly touted out of high school. I think he's been playing for 3 years now with regular playing time at North Carolina. Kind of guy, experienced guy you really would want to have in that secondary with Jalen Jones and now Antonio Johnson and probably Damani leaving. Experience, leadership, That could all be key there. Hopefully Tony Grimes gets back on campus soon. Seems like A&M is a very serious player in that game. A couple of other names that really don't have much substantiated traction yet, but are names that I would recommend keeping an eye out for just because of positional needs. JoJo Earl out of Alabama, high-profile receiver, never really panned out at Bama. Seems like the kind of guy that might take a chance at A&M with so much space on the roster. And at linebacker, you have Ernest Hausman out of Nebraska, just took a visit to Iowa. Doesn't seem like there's a line of communication established, but with how dire that need is, I wouldn't be surprised if something gets going. And then Anthony Goodwin out of Tulsa, another linebacker, same situation as Hausman, just one of those higher profile names at linebacker with experience that you'd want to at least give a chat or a look to. So just some names to keep an eye on. No rumors on those three guys. But linebacker and receiver, guys, that's going to be where we need to focus. Keep an eye out for those two position groups, obviously in dire need. But let's go ahead and transition over to good old classic high school recruiting. Back in the day, we would have started here, but now we have all this other stuff. It's crazy. These coaches, I mean, you got to be ready for so much as a college coach. I mean, I can't imagine like a pro coach, an NFL coach come back to college, having to deal with all of this. It's crazy. There's so much on these guys' plates, especially if they're in a bowl game right now. But a couple of recruiting grabs over the last week that y'all have probably already looked into and know about, and that's Rylan Kennedy for 2023, edge guy, smaller guy, but like lanky and twitchy. He's a basketball player, multi-sport athlete that Jimbo seems to love. He loves those guys. Kind of a late bloomer, but it's a really good, shot to take at a guy who's a late bloomer later into football in his life that you want to fill out your recruiting class with, because he's the kind of guy that could just take off and have that really high ceiling. Probably has a pretty low floor, but a really high ceiling, and that's the kind of guy you want to take a chance on. And then 2024, DeBron Gatling, receiver. It's a great get, but I don't put too much stock this far out on recruits. We're getting closer to just the pure 2024 cycle. After February, it's pure 24. But it's still a little early for me to get really excited about that. But it's a positive development. It's momentum, and he could stick around. It happens. But, things also don't work out that far out all the time. So we'll see what happens there, but very positive development. And I've been hinting at and even talking about this weekend is huge. It's the last weekend before early signing period. All of the high-profile guys that are on A&M's watch list right now, like Javian Toviano, Peyton Bowen, Anthony Hill, these guys are all making their decisions here in the next couple of weeks. Some before the weekend, some after the weekend. I believe Toviano is making his decision this Thursday. LSU lean heavily, probably not an A&M guy. I don't think he'll be here this weekend because he's making his decision before the weekend. But you never know. But a couple of guys that I'm keeping my eye on that are all but confirmed to be showing up this weekend that aren't commits to A&M, because guys like TJ Shanahan will be there. I'm sure other commits will be there. But a couple of guys that aren't committed to A&M that are committed elsewhere that are going to be at the event this weekend. Tony Mitchell, 5-star commit to Bama, defensive back, highly, highly rated guy, highly touted player. It's hard to pry the guys out of Alabama, out of Nick Saban's monster, but it's apparent that Bama's not immune to the current landscape of college football with all the transfer portal guys that they're having to deal with. They're up there with A&M with some of the most transfer portal guys, and like I've been saying, if you just recruit at the high enough level for long enough, you're gonna have guys want to enter the portal because these guys all want to showcase their very, very highly sought after ability. But Tony Mitchell, if you can somehow flip him, the amount of momentum your program would gain, the amount of break the internet status A&M would get, it would be colossal. It's a long shot, but he's supposed to be there this weekend, so keep an eye out on it. And then another one in a pretty dire position of need that I have not mentioned yet, and that's quarterback. After losing Haynes King and Eli Stowers to the transfer portal, you only have two scholarship quarterbacks on roster. But Marcel Reed, the 4-star Ole Miss quarterback commit, is supposedly going to be there this weekend. So A&M is going to get the final shot at a couple of these guys. So if everything is true and these guys do end up showing up this weekend, that means A&M is going to get the last shot at a couple of these guys. And then, like I said before, Mason Cobb's supposed to be in for the weekend, pushed it back to be part of this big event. And then one guy that obviously everybody in Texas seems to have their eyes on, that's Anthony Hill. Apparently, there's a strong push from A&M to get him in this weekend. It's not confirmed yet by anybody that he will be. We don't know what he's doing, but we do know that he has an in-home visit with Sark this coming week before the weekend, and we do know that he had a visit with either Jimbo or Santucci. I don't know if it was in-home or at school or if it was at A&M. I don't think it was at A&M, but he was visited by the A&M staff a couple days ago. But if Sark gets the last shot at him, obviously that bodes very well for Texas. But if you can get him in for the weekend, that'd be a huge, huge final feather in your cap in that recruitment. So obviously Anthony Hill is priority one, getting that kind of linebacker for next year where it's such a position of need, both in the forefront and in the depth. And as far as prospects for years to come, Anthony Hill fills every need there. So that's huge. You hope to get him in for the weekend. Keep an eye out for that. And then I already mentioned Toviano making his decision on Thursday, probably an LSU guy. But then Peyton Bowen, still trying to be grabbed by A&M, committed to Notre Dame. But we're trying to get him in for the weekend. Keep an eye out for his name to be added to the pool of players coming in for the weekend. And then one more little note that I saw was that Austin Novosad, the commit to Baylor, he had an in-home visit with Jimbo a couple days ago. So they're not giving up there. Obviously, Jimbo's not going to give up. Jimbo closes like a maniac. But with such a dire need for quarterback, just keep an eye out on those names. Haven't heard much from Malachi Nelson. I think that ship has been sailed for a while now. But that's kind of a lay of the land in recruiting right now. We got the big weekend coming up. Everything is going to be, keep your alerts on for Monday on all the insiders, TexAgs, 247. Wherever you get your news from, keep the notifications on because you're going to be wanting to hear about what these big names thought of the weekend. And they're going to be committing here soon. Anthony Hill scheduled for December 21st. Toviano, like I said, this week, I think Thursday. It's crunch time. Everything's happening all at once. It's crazy how this all just lands in the same time period. But like I said, A&M is freed up to focus on it. So guys, what is your priority list right now? Obviously we're looking at linebackers, we're looking at receivers. It'd be nice to get a running back, but Ruben Owens alleviates a lot of that pressure. You're also looking for quarterbacks now. So quarterback, linebacker, receiver, that's what you desperately need. What is your priority list? What are some names that you're prioritizing? Obviously we got the Anthony Hill, but Mason Cobb, that could be a huge get. And then the addition of Nick Jackson into the transfer portal, that's huge for A&M. So look out for all of these names, guys. I want to hear your priority list. There's so much going on. There is so much going on right now. But what I'm hoping for is by the time I'm making this video for next week, we got some announcements coming up. We got some announcements made, and they're positive A&M announcements. There are rumblings that this is going to be a huge weekend for A&M, not only in the people you have coming, but in the decisions that are expected to be made. Just a lot of hype from a lot of the recruiting staff on Twitter. The eyeball emoji from Edge Cooper, whatever you want to read into that. Let's see some commitments come through. That Ruben Owens is such a strong domino. Had 2 commitments quickly after that. It's feeling pretty positive right now, guys. But that's all I have for you guys. I wanted to give you a lay of the landscape right now, heading in to the final stretch before early signing day. So if you enjoyed this content, subscribe, hit that bell notification so you don't miss my videos. Obviously, everything is changing super fast. The Yulkeith Brown announcement happened while I was recording, so I had to stop and restart. But stick around, guys. We have a lot to talk about, a lot coming up. And once this recruiting stuff's over, I'm going to go back and reflect more on the 2022 season. So thanks for watching, guys. Gig 'em.